Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Good morning, Leroy.
How are you?
Yeah, great. Thank you for asking. How
Good.
are you doing?
Good. All right. Ready to do some more reading? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you can hear me.
Good. All right. Bring up the book and get started reading. I'm here with Aswartha, and we're reading the book Universe is Calling by Eric Butterworth. Chapter 7, The Way of Silence. As we have said, getting a new insight in scientific prayer calls for unlearning many attitudes and practices that we have become conditioned to over many years. These changes do not come easily. We are faced with the need to perceive a larger thought of God, which may be as difficult as the mental adjustment required of the people of Columbus' day after he had proved the world to be round. It was actually several hundred years before people could see a sunrise or sunset without perceiving a flat world. And today we can never take for granted that we have disposed of the God out there perception and totally established ourselves in the present. So to repeat, prayer is not trying to reach for God, not even to reach God. It is giving up the very desire to reach. We have talked about praying to God, sending our appeal to the man upstairs. In this context, our prayer is a performance that we put on for his eyes and ears. However, if we can just get the perspective of the present, then God is not someone to pray to, but a depth of awareness and energy to pray from. Thus, a vital step in prayer is focusing on that depth. So, yeah, he's talking about, if we're not actually praying to someone, we're praying from the present. And prayer is and Jesus said that we should be praying always. And so it's it's an inner awareness of who we are. I think that that we want to become aware of, and that's something that's hard to get grasp because we've been taught all our life to pray to God or reach up, and we hope that our prayer will somehow magically or whatever it somehow our we hope our prayer will get to him and that he's not too busy to hear us. But God is omnipresent, and you don't have to beg or anything. He simply hears. You have anything you want to share, Swarthy?
Yeah, it's basically, he says God is within us and we are the expressions of God.
Mhm. Yes. You want to go ahead and read?
Okay. The religious student of the Western world has been strongly conditioned to religious dualism, the perception of God and humanity. Thus, we Westerners have found it extremely difficult to understand the Oriental concept of monism, the awareness of one basic spirit, one mind, one life substance. Thus, though in recent times there has been a widespread interest in the Eastern practice of meditation, in most cases it has been taken out of the concept of the oneness of God and humanity. The emphasis has been instead upon consciousness explanation, upon relaxation response. These are extremely helpful states, but they can never lead a person to true self-awareness. This can only become this can only come through practicing the presence or the realization of oneness with the ever-present divine flow. The word meditation conjures up the image of scantily clad guru sitting cross-legged on a chais, perhaps holding a bucket of flowers in his hands. It is not surprising that most clergymen reject meditation as a heretical practice because it has come from what they refer to as pagan religions of the East. Obviously, it meets with resistance because it turns a person away from dependence on dogma, ritual, and clergy intermediaries. Thus, it is a threat to the religious establishment. Yeah, I think yeah, they don't believe meditation because it is threat to religion. And it came from the East. That's what he's trying to say.
Mhm. Yeah, and like anything else, it can be taken out of you know, it can be taken out of context or out of you know the real thing. Because I've learned through the years that for every for every counterfeit there's a real. You can't counterfeit something that's not first real. And so our our work here is to find the real. What is real about meditation and implement that into our life because we are spirit, God is spirit, and we are of that same spirit. And so it's really all about becoming conscious or aware of who we are, remembering eh, remembering that we are not separate from God and that we have the same power. Uh, Scripture tells us that the same power that raised Jesus from the dead lives within us. So if we have that same power, then he also said that all the things he could do, we can do, and even greater. So if we tap into that uh, power or we become aware of that power, then nothing is impossible.
Yeah,
However, the inward art, as Bradford calls meditation, is an emphasis on turning within, touching the depths of your inner self, the point where God is manifesting as you. And that would be, if you think about a wave in the ocean, a wave is the ocean manifesting itself as a wave. It's not separate. And so God is manifesting as you. It is a vital step in prayer that has its roots for the Western seeker in Jesus' call to enter into thine inner chamber and having shut the door, pray to the Father in secret. It is the absence of this meditation process that has been the missing key to power in the whole Judeo-Christian concept of prayer. Thus, the prayer of institutional religion has deteriorated into a performance of words, form, and ritual, with little or no real communion, no silence, no listening. And that's how I grew up. We actually had a prayer book, and we just read through the prayer book, you know, said the prayer, read the prayer, and then we were done. And that, we hoped God would hear, and it was all like checking off a box, okay, I did my prayer now this morning or in the evening.
yeah.
So You have anything more you want to add?
I think it's same with all the religions. I think it's basically we do also have the things which basically go to each god. We have the prayer books and basically read these prayer books. Somebody will have a big book, some will have a small book, and they basically recite those prayers. That's it's basically but you go to mostly weekly once, and we in our culture we go whenever we like.
Hmm.
It's always open. Basically, in the afternoon times they will close for some time, but they will open since morning. I think 5 o'clock only some temples will open. Depends on the thing, but 5 6 and goes until maybe 10 or something like that, 11 10. Then afternoon they close for some time. Then they start evening at 4 o'clock or something.
Okay. Hmm. Well,
Mm.
we are suggesting three basic steps or stages in the process of scientific prayer: relax and let go. Number two, turn inward to become one with the secret power. Number three, project this power with an affirmation or treatment. This last step will be dealt with in the next chapter. And so that would, Jesus talked about going into uh, your closet. He means he's not talking about a literal closet. He's talking about going within yourself, praying to the Father in secret, which is it's not meant to be construed as keeping it a secret, but it's the Father in secret is we cannot see the Father with our physical eyes, but the Father within us. Uh, I think I've heard say the word Father actually means source. So we want to tap into the source. So I'll pass it to you.
Okay. Imagine, if you will, a 19th century fire department. Firefighting often consisted of forming a bucket brigades between a source of water and a fire. Buckets of water would be filled from a well or stream and passed on by means of a human chain, with the last person in the chain throwing the buckets of water into the fire. It was a crude but often effective system. But just imagine the bucket begins passed on through the human chain without having first been water. How foolish the last person would feel as they threw their buckets of nothing onto the fire. And so it is with a prayer that consists of rattling of words without taking time to touch the inner wellspring of living water. Meditation has become a popular word in the past 30 years, but it has been a confused term. It has been thought of as a thing. One may say, oh yes, I meditate, nor, no, I don't meditate, but I would like to learn, tell you how. And right at this point, we become vulnerable to all kinds of delusion because of the many different ways that exist. Of course, the person we are asking gives their particular way authoritatively as the way.
You want to comment anything on that?
Then he says that meditation is the one which gives you the inner peace, or it gives you direct communication to the God, or whatever basically we belong to. It's like the infinite intelligence. And somewhere he said it's one spirit, one mind. And he said somewhere that one spirit and one mind. And we are basically expression of that spirit and expression of that mind.
Hmm. Yeah, that was a good. Uh, yeah, and Scripture even tells us that there is one mind. Uh, what stood out to me here is somebody says they don't know how to meditate. They'd like to learn, and then right at this point, we become vulnerable to all kinds of delusion. 'Cause if you think you don't know how to meditate and you want someone to teach you, that person could teach you just about any kind of meditation, and you wouldn't know whether it's right or wrong. And I don't know whether he talks about it, but I know that well, maybe he does talk about it. You want to go ahead and read this page?
Yeah. The great yoga master Aurobindo said that it is not necessary to be told how to meditate. He held that whatever you need will come of itself. If in your practice and at all times you are sincere and keep yourself open to the divine force, this should be considered by all those who have gotten into meditation. It is an important insight, suggesting that you are part of a wholeness which is God. So there is nowhere to go in meditation. It is not trying to get into something or out of something or up to something. And it is not trying to do something. Actually, it is not doing. Meditation thus is not a thing you learn to do, but the how involves a technique which may be mechanical, and there is simply no way that we can experience oneness in a mechanical way. You don't need to know how, you need only to desire. God is seeking you. One woman had a naively brilliant realization. She said, aha, now I see. God is praying for me. When you let go and become open and receptive, the divine flow springs forth speedily. Think according to this, basically meditation is nothing but there is nothing to learn. You just simply sit and divine flows, divine power flows within you. Sort
Hmm.
of doing nothing.
Yeah, it's as he said, it is not trying to do something. Actually, it is not doing. A meditation is not doing something. It's uh, you can't experience oneness in a mechanical way. You don't need to know how. You need only to desire. God is seeking you, and so when we come to that realization that God is God is simply expressing Himself through you, and the moment we let go, then the divine flow can uh, flow through us and use us.
Yeah,
I prefer to use the term the silence instead of meditation, where it puts the emphasis on a state of consciousness instead of a mental exercise. Oh, yeah, I like that. Jesus says, go into your room and shut the door, and in praying, do not heap up empty phrases. In other words, wordless silence. Normally, prayer is chiefly concerned with words, whether spontaneous words or those taken out of a prayer book. With these, the average person says their prayers. I often say that learning is what remains when you have forgotten everything you have heard. In this same sense, prayer is what you experience beyond the words that you repeat. If you don't experience anything beyond the words, then you may not be really praying. You are just mumbling words and mouthing propositions. This is not the high level prayer we are talking about. Prayer is where you are in consciousness. From the wisdom of ancient China, there is a saying that if a person be absolutely quiet, the heavenly heart will manifest itself. To be absolutely quiet, this is not easy, for most of us are so conditioned to activity and noise that silence is deafening. Like a city person going to the country, quiet country lanes, just the rush of the wind and through the trees. It is deafening. So yeah, I think that we don't like to sit in silence. Silence is there's just something about silence that we are not accustomed to, and we think that in order to make something happen, we have to always have some kind of activity or noise going on. Otherwise, then nothing is happening. Do you have any comments?
Yeah, he once said it's basically meditation. Instead of meditation, we call it as a silence. Sit in silence, then basically you communicate with infinite intelligence and you get hunches or whatever is needed and to resolve your current challenge.
Hmm, that's quite a long chapter. Maybe we'll do one more. Yeah. Okay. It's just where we stopped. Okay. Maybe here. Yeah. Okay. We'll read another page and then see where we go from there. If you want to go ahead and read.
Okay. Have you been throwing buckets of nothing on the flames? Be still. Turn away from the tendency to plunge into prayer by rattling off your repertoire of affirmations. Now, in truth, we believe in the prayer of affirmation rather than supplication. We speak the word of truth, but unless we become centered in the source of power within, we may use affirmations and treatments like a cosmic club with which we try to beat off the terrors of night and day. We talk of the power of the spoken word, but words have no power of themselves. They are more or less instruments of power if we are in tune with the divine flow.
Here we may use affirmations and treatments like a cosmic club with which we try to beat off the terrors of night and day. And I think so many people use prayer in that way. They think there's something out there they have to try to get rid of, but the you, everything has an opposite. Like a coin has a back and a front. If you would try to get rid of the back, you would get rid of the front also. So you can't really get rid of whatever is out there, or any terror or whatever. You simply have to, just like darkness, you don't have to try to scare away the darkness. All you have to do is turn on the light. And this is what I think he's talking about is just simply speaking the truth, the word of truth. And there's nothing you don't have to get rid of anything. It will the word of truth will it's like turning on the light. The darkness will flee of its own. Do you have any comments?
No, basically, he says that praying is basically not needed. That's what he's basically trying to say, that spoken word has no power. anything like that. Basically, better to be in silence so that you can communicate with the universal mind.
Yeah, unless, yeah, the spoken word has no power unless we become centered in the source of power within. Yeah. Okay, what did we? They are marvelous instruments of power if we are in tune with the divine flow. Otherwise, when we are working with a problem, there is a tendency to start mouthing affirmations as if we were throwing darts. Mm. Consider an archer in target practice. The archer stands on the archery line, bow and arrow in hand, facing a target 50 yards in the distance. Now the object is to send the arrow to the target. The intellect might logically lead one to fling the arrow as far as possible, but you can't fling an arrow more than a few yards. There is certainly no way you could get it to the target in this way. That is why you have a bow. You fix the arrow in the bow, left arm stiff, arrow fixed to the string with the thumb and index finger of your right hand. Then you pull the arrow back, back, back. Your object is to send the arrow to the target, but you are pulling the arrow away from the target. There is a secret process. You pull the arrow back as far as you can, building up great latent energy. Then what do? Flick the arrow out? No. You simply let it go. That's correct. Just let it go. And swoosh, the arrow flies straight and true toward this distant target. It is a good illustration explaining the role of the silence in prayer. We want to pray for the condition out there, but we need to let go and go down our well to experience and become imbued with transcendent energy. Then we may look on the object for which we are praying and with no anxious effort simply take our word of truth. Let it go and swoosh, it goes forth to accomplish that whereto it is sent. And now, mystery of mysteries, the word which you hear is not mine, but the Father's who sent me. It is a reminder that I of myself can do nothing, but through the power of God in me, I can do all things. I have little power in my human consciousness, but when I am lifted up into the Christ consciousness and attuned to the divine flow, I can do great things. Wow, there's so much in there. The word which you hear is not mine, but the Father's who sent me. So it is not we who are speaking, but the Father. So we allow the Father's word and his power to flow through us and to do uh, to do great things. Do you have any more comments? Then I think we'll close.
I think he says that whatever we speak also, it's not mine, but the Father who sent me. Yeah. But, but it is a reminder that I of myself can do nothing but through the power of God in me. I can do all things. I have little power in my human consciousness, but when I am lifted up to the Christ consciousness and attuned to the divine flow, I can do great things.
Hmm. Yeah, that's such a, and I think most of us have forgotten or have not. We haven't seen it, so we think that maybe it isn't for today. Many people think that way. That's how I grew up. Is that, well, okay, people back in Bible days could do it, but somehow things have changed, and today we just have to believe in it. But but nothing has changed. God does not change. The universe hasn't changed. The power is still the same. And it still works exactly the way it did. 2,000 years ago or 6,000 years ago. So all we have to do is get into the flow of it and allow it to pull back our bow and then let it go. All right, I think we'll stop sharing and I will stop the recording. Thank you, Miss Wortham.